Hello Internet! Welcome to Wednesday's Serial, where today I want to talk about X-Men The Second Coming. So for those of you who don't follow X-Men too closely, basically the whole status quo of everything for all the mutants in Marvel changed around an event called House of M, in which at the end, a very powerful character called the Scarlet Witch said no more mutants, and there's only like 198. The numbers kind of varied, and not sure there's really an exact count. There's a very limited amount, and they've become an endangered species now, which I feel really destroyed the metaphor and really destroyed a lot of story potential, and you could see writers for years to come really struggling with how to deal with this. And there were a lot of great stories that were more or less typical X-Men stories that didn't focus on this aspect as much. But every time they did, it either ended fairly poorly in my mind or fairly well. Now, about a year ago, there was a big X arc called The Messiah War, which is really an X-Force and Cable crossover that had some other characters tie in, like Deadpool, but it didn't really affect those characters as much. But what we saw for the first time was a spring of hope for mutants, where the idea that they could live on, the idea of this mystical element being put on a genetic element was starting to fade away, and the way the story did it was very interesting, all pinpointed on one baby named Hope. Yeah, not exactly the most creative name, but the story really pushed forward, and I really enjoyed the fact that finally I was seeing something in X-Men other than desperation, which is really hard to see. A lot of characters that had always pushed forward, and now, after stumbling back for so many years, finally found a way to grab a hold of something and try to push forward, which is really something you need in story potential. And honestly, the fact that they let it linger for as many years as they did in continuity is a huge failing in my mind. So here we are now at the Second Coming, and we're starting to see this character Hope that Cable's taken through a bunch of stuff. I don't know, I didn't read it, I heard it was terrible. But anyways, they're back. She's now grown, teenage-ish. She's kinda hot for how supposedly young she is, so I'd like to go with more 18 in my mind, so I don't feel so wrong. But the idea that she's come back, and now she's this Hope going in, and the hope for the mutant race, a little on the nose again, but oh well, and you have all these anti-mutant groups trying to kill her, yada yada yada. I'm kind of sad to see that so early in. We're 3 issues in, and what I want to see is this potential, where things are going to go forward, where the potential is. And I have a feeling that's not going to be now until the end of the miniseries, which is sad because I've been waiting for years for this kind of leap forward, for the story to finally advance. And now we're, I guess, earning the right to that, as it were, but I honestly just am waiting to see the resolution, and I'm months away from seeing that. So personally, whereas I like this series and I like some of it, a lot of it just feels so much more ridiculous, even for an X-book. Like, there's a scene where a robot needed one of these anti-mutant humans to be assimilated as a sentinel. So what it does is it rips out the head, and then there's an entire spine, and then it gets absorbed, and you have this huge mechanical mech body with the nerd head on top with glasses, and it was a little ridiculous even for me. I mean, guys shooting lasers, people popping bones for claws out their hands, whatever, I'm used to that, but that scene was just so surreal. It pulled me right out of the comic, especially the way it was approached. And I feel like this story is so action-focused when I'm so much more worried about the political ramifications. And whereas I haven't seen the building up of Utopia going forward with all these X-books, I'd like to see more of that, more of the political implications as well, because that's where I feel the story is right now, and it's just kind of being dumbed down in a way that it doesn't need to be. In a way, it's talking down to the audience, which for people who have been following this for so long, even off and on, it's kind of painful to try to sit through, but at the same time, it's pretty good. So if you have any X-interest, X-Force, X-Men, whatever, I'd say this should probably be worth reading, because these mega events have been good, despite the fact that a lot of the X-books overall just haven't had the quality that a lot of other comics have had of late. And that's always really been the way of X-Men. There's lots of great stories that punctuate great moments that are followed by a lot of mediocrity and wandering, mainly because they're trying to approach such a large cast with no real focus. So that's my thoughts on this current arc and really X-Men in general. And, thoughts, questions, insults, love to hear them. Just post them up and I'll be sure to respond. Thanks. Hope you guys have a good week.